Okay, I'm going to go ahead and begin. Welcome, everyone. My name is Richard Capone. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Let's Go Learn. And today's webinar is leveraging next-gen technology in special education. We're real excited because we are case endorsed, and some of you coming here today probably attended the case law conference in Minnesota. So that was really exciting. We were there as well. And so thank you if you're joining us from that event. Also, I think we have some other people who just signed up last minute for today's webinar and dive into it. So first of all, who is Let's Go Learn? So we were founded in 2000 by myself and Dr. McCollum from UC Berkeley. And we launched one of the first computer adaptive assessments that worked over a dial-up modem back in 2001. But really, our guiding principle has always been students are more than single scores. We need lots of data to diagnose and figure out why are they doing well, why are they struggling, and really to lower the threshold for teachers to do personalization. So that's really our guiding principle back in 2000 and 2001 and the same today. So what is Let's Go Learn? So basically, we are a platform. It's a precision diagnostic assessment platform that we have math and reading assessments, and we actually have behavior coming out as well in the fall. And all of that comes into our engine, and then it generates prescriptive reports for teachers to use, individual assessment reports, as well as driving individual courses for students in math and reading. All right. And so that is, at a nutshell, sort of a high level, that's what we are. Assessment with personalized instruction. But when you get into the nuances of it, which I'm going to show you in a second, we're a lot more, right? Especially for special education. First of all, how do we support you? So this is real important. What's unique about Let's Go Learn is our assessment works across the entire district. So while a lot of you are special educators and you're looking at, the detailed data, how we can help with IEP writing and writing of short-term goals, the cool thing is once a district uses our assessment, the special educators will be using the detailed reports, where maybe the general education may just be using summative reports and parent reports, and then MTSS intervention may be using other diagnostic reports to adjust interventions. But really, it's the same tool, works across the district, right? Now, this is the workflow in special education. You would diagnose your students at the very beginning. This provides your baseline data. It provides your data, 44 present levels in math, 7 in reading. This will be used for your PLAFs. And then you would use the reports to help write those PLAFs, get narrative goals, set short-term goals and objectives. And this would be this is a great time saver. Our customers now tell us their teachers cut down on 50% of their time in writing IEPs and goals by using our system. And then the third step is you have an automated course in ELA and math for every single student. So they could just jump on it. It would fill in their gaps. The teacher has the ability to monitor that, tweak the assignments, assign lessons on their own. And then anytime you want, you could do a quiz. Now, this is really powerful. Any quiz you assign in our system and the student takes, it lays on top of the baseline data. So you have instant progress monitoring that the teacher doesn't even have to worry about. And I'll show this to you in a second. So that's why we call it one-click progress monitoring. And then, of course, in the very center of this is just bite-sized professional development throughout the year to help support teachers. All right, so what's our secret sauce? What's different about Let's Go Learn, and how do we support special education? Well, our assessments are built on a diagnostic model of assessment. So what does that mean? Most assessments that are computer-based were really developed for benchmark testing against the current grade level standard. So when you take an assessment in fourth grade, it gives the students fourth grade math items that are hovering around fourth. Maybe they go down to third, but really the items are really around that zone. But our assessment says, I don't care what grade you're in. I'm going to go down to kindergarten level. I'm going to go up to 7th or 8th grade level. I'm going to find your present level, which is the highest point that you can be successful at. And then I also confirm that your skill above that is a non-mastery. So we actually go through and figure out exactly where students' instructional points are, where the present levels are, through our diagnostic model of assessment. And it's not just one item either. So if I'm testing somebody in math, we look at it from a standpoint of 44 subtests. So look at place value here. If the student ends up at this point, I know that they failed the skill right here or the concept, and they had a mastery at this point. So let me show this to you on the next screen. I'm looking at place value. Place value technically is these skills and concepts. 1, tens, hundreds, thousands, expanded forms, millions, decimal. This student has mastered these skills and they have these skills to work on. And so this is the present level, and this is my next 2 short-term goals that I want to target if I want to target place value. Okay, I'm going to show this to you when we jump into the system, but this is really, really key. All right, now in terms of reading, same thing, but not as many subtests. There are 6 right here, 7 technically. Again, we go up and down to find the actual present level of the student, and then we have their skill level. And I'm going to show this to you as well. All right, in terms of instruction, once you have powerful diagnostic data that's very precise and it finds all those present levels of the student, it makes for really, really good instruction, right? Now, our model for instruction is to optimize learning. For optimal learning, you need to address motivation, engagement, and cognitive load, right? So let me talk about this a little bit. So as far as the unique learning path, when you have a really good, precise diagnostic assessment up front, that reduces the cognitive load. And that's huge because basically we're giving the student the lesson at exactly the level they need it. Most assessments, a lot of assessments are summative, and companies use a summative assessment to drive personalized learning. That's not really correct because you end up stressing out the student because the lessons are too hard or too easy. The other thing is making sure the lessons are culturally relevant, right? Are they engaging? Do you have that? That improves motivation and increases engagement and inclusiveness. We have music in our lessons, and that again makes it easier to learn. When you have visual music, that reduces cognitive load, improves motivation, improves engagement. Voice stress and intonation, so the authors are engaging, their voice is changing the intonation. That again makes it easier to learn. When you use intonation in a lesson, that actually reduces cognitive load. Finally, we have multiple modes of learning and the user interface, user experience. That, again, is really helpful as well. And finally, gamification. This addresses motivation and engagement. So a lot of lessons do use gamifications. We have a badge system that students earn a bronze, silver, and gold badge. But overall, when you take all of these points together, it really does optimize learning for students, especially at-risk students. All right, I'm going to jump into the system demo right now. So let me go ahead and show it to you. So I am logged into the system. Now what's cool about this is real data, right? These are real student data, students with IEPs. But the difference is that we've obfuscated all their names, so obviously for privacy reasons. But what's great about this is we can take a look at it. So right now I'm looking at some reading scores. So initially the student's done with the assessment, and I want to see high frequency words. I can see the range, word recognition, phonics, phonemic awareness, spelling, vocabulary, comprehension. So this is the measures that a reading specialist would want to look at, right? The green ones are maximum score. So this student, Ansel, has a maximum high frequency word score of high 3rd grade, phonics, high 4th grade, and the word rec skill is 12th grade. So this student overall is reading really well, right? But we do see the oral vocabulary is a little bit low. So again, this gives us an idea of what we want to do and how to judge these students. So if I want to look at this, I could look at the teacher report. This report is actually popular with general ed as well. I could take a look at this report. How Ansel reads words, we see within decoding, they're very strong, solid foundation of sight words, word recognition, and phonics, right? How Ansel understands words, we see the vocabulary is lower, how Ansel pulls it all together. So again, we explain this all in natural words and language, not too technical, so that way most people can understand it. And then we talk about the profile of the student. So a lot of times teachers will actually use this paragraph here because this paragraph is generated based on the data of the student. So this is a good thing even to put into a PLAF. Okay, but we have a separate one as well that inserts the student's name that I'll show you in a second. We see within phonics, this student has mastered all the phonics principles. Okay, and then some recommended activities down here as well. All right, if I come back over here, what's interesting about this is if I'm looking at these reading scores in this group, let's say I want to do some small group instruction, or we're in an inclusion environment where maybe I tested everyone, I could take a look at phonics, and let's take a look at phonics and the scope and sequence of how you teach phonics, right? So here is my class. These students have all mastered phonics, right? And then these students are working on beginning sounds. These two students are working on beginning consonant, short vowel right here, these students. And then the very top one, Rhonda, is working on multi-syllable words. So again, this is my instructional groups. I can actually grab a group right here and I can actually create a group and assign specifically to those students if I wanted to assign something separate. So we have some really powerful tools for assigning lessons. And I could assign one of our lessons, or I could even just, group them and assign something else if I wanted to. All right. So now let me go back over here. Now, if I'm a teacher, the student has an IEP, and I want to write an IEP, how would I do that, right? So let's go ahead and take a look at one of these students. So I'm going to take a look at Dylan over here. So I'm going to select special education report. I could also just select goal setting if it's a student who's in MTSS and maybe they need a personalized plan, but they don't have an IEP. But I'll select this right here. And now I see my scores. I decide, okay, where do I want to work on? If I look at this, it's interesting. This student has maximum high frequency words. Their phonics is low. Obviously comprehension is low, and vocabulary. I'm gonna focus on phonics right now. So I can click phonics, and I could say right now, initially, what's the present level? Dylan can read words with consonant blends. That's my present level, right? But what do I do next? So I can select the next 3 skills and I refresh it. And now I see these are the next 3 skills I need to work on. Learning some long vowels, learning all long vowels, and then learning consonant digraphs. So again, these are my next 3 goals I need to focus on. Here's that prescriptive paragraph. The reading assessment, Dylan indicates that Dylan possesses low reading skills in many areas, blah, 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 blah. So again, this is written based on Dylan's actual data. This is a personalized paragraph for him. So you could go ahead and copy that and wordsmith it a little bit more, maybe add some other stuff to it. But this is a great workflow for your teachers in saving times on their IEPs. And then of course you can go through other areas too if I want to add some more skill areas that I want to focus on. Okay, so let me jump into do a little bit more of the system and then we'll continue. So I'm going to show you math, because math is actually a really, really crazy area. If I look at my students now in math, I look at my class, I see these 5 scores. Now, this is very common. Other assessments have this: numbers and operations, measurements, data, geometry, algebra. And it tells you, okay, if I look at this one student, Benjamin, or I look at Claudia, Claudia is 5.57 in numbers, 4.22 in measurement. These are low, but I still don't know what to do, okay? I can't really set goals on this data. So what I'm going to do is break out into one of these strands. If I click on numbers and operations, now I see numbers and operations is basically numbers, place value, ordering and comparing, addition of whole numbers, subtraction of whole numbers, multiplication of whole numbers, division of whole numbers, fractions, decimal operations, right? This is really what it is all about. Green scores are maximum scores. So if I want to take a look at this, just to illustrate that every single one of these is tied to a skill and concept, I could select place value and hit instructional placement. And now here are my students within the scope and sequences of place value. All these students have mastered it. These students are working on 1 and 2 digit place value. These students here are all working on decimal place value. This is amazing because this is across 44 subtests, right? And this is why our instruction is so fast at remediating students, because we can find those gaps accurately and actually assign it. Now, I'm talking about a lot of pieces here. I'm jumping around, but if I come back over here and let's take a look at one of these students. Actually, let me come back to the summary. Let's take a look at Claudia again. Let's take a look at the special education board. So if I needed to write an IEP, and this is something we would train your teachers to do, right? First, administer their assessment. And next, let's take a look at the student. What do I want to focus on? Now, I know overall in math, numbers and operations is probably the most important subtest or strand, and after that is algebra. So that's just something I know, but I may also want to focus on some of these other areas. But numbers and operations, so I'm going to focus on numbers and operations. And so initially we say, what are the present levels? And here we see Claudia can correctly round to the nearest tens, hundreds of thousands. Claudia can identify the place value decimals. Great. We see these different present levels, right? So I could use that in my PLAF. And then if I want to figure out what I work on next. So for this student, I would go ahead and look at the lowest scores possible and say, okay, there's some here in 6th grade, 5th. So I would focus on this goal here under multiplication. Claudia will correctly identify commutative, associative, distributive properties. And then within fractions, I'd probably work on all 3 of these skills. And then maybe I jump down to percentages. So right there, these are my goals. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'll work on those 7 concepts and skills for the next 4 or 5 weeks. And now I'm ready to go, right? So you didn't even have to figure this out. It's all automatic once you give the student the full assessment. If I look down the bottom, there is a small paragraph I could use for a PLAF. Just overall saying Claudia is highly at risk in 1 out of 5 mathematics strands in foundational mathematics and at risk in 4 out of 5 strands. So anyway, this sort of gives you an ability to sort of write some broader statements about their data, right? And you could use that and put that into the PLAF. Now, the other thing too is it does give you some, if they're using our instruction, our EDGE series, you can see some different lessons that they're working on for progress monitoring. And let me go ahead and jump over here. So actually, let me just go back real quickly and show you something else. This is really incredible. The progress monitoring is unreal in our assessment, because if I take a look at a student, let's look at Ansel, and I click progress monitoring, and I take a look at 5 years. Now, it's a little confusing. Let me just filter this down to assessments only. So these are the raw assessments. These are full assessment. It's called Adam. And if I want to map these over time, I could check these. Okay, let's just, check some different ones, hit chart. Now these are the strand scores and total scores. So we see this is how Ansel has done assessments over time. But what's really cool about this is if I go back and I want to take a look at this again, I can also include quizzes in that. So if I include snapshots on any given week, and I could just check some here, if the student did only a quiz, so they did the full assessment 1 week and another week they just did maybe a few quizzes like working on those fractions or comparing and ordering, it'll actually regenerate your total score and your strand scores. Because we're a diagnostic model, we could do that. And so then I can have full data that shows me all my total score and my 5 strand scores just based off 1 quiz. So you have a rolling progress monitoring. Anytime you give quizzes, it recalculates your total scores and allows you to look at new data. So this is unheard of. So from a teacher standpoint, do my baseline assessment. I work with Richard in fractions. I quiz him on the fraction skills I taught. And every time I do that, I have a full set of data and it recalculates my total score. That means the teacher doesn't have to think about progress monitoring. It means you have 100% compliance as well, right? All right, I'm gonna jump into instruction and then we'll open it up to questions because I wanna make sure people can ask questions. So if we go over to EDGE, now this is where you can actually look at those personalized learning paths for each student. So if I look at Claudia, let's take a look at what we've assigned for Claudia. So first let's look at usage detail. Okay, so obviously this is a demo account, so some of the data, it does get a little bit old. Right here we see some of the lessons they did, telling time, counting money word problems, triangles, temperature. And this is interesting, this student's older, but we see a lot of low lessons. So this is finding those gaps and filling them in. You can say, okay, 76 score, 11 minutes, 90, 14 minutes. So we could see that this student is slowly knocking off all those gaps in their knowledge, which is going to lead to skills mastery once you sort of knock these things off. Now I could also go back and see, well, what are they working on next? Upcoming lessons. Okay, there we go. So now for this particular student, we see what are the lessons they need to work on. So this lesson has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 lessons at 4th grade, a bunch of lessons at 5th grade. But again, this is the path. Now this is in real time. Every time the student logs in, this path is updated. So if you give the student quizzes periodically and you're working with them and you have sort of a formative assessment process, right, which makes sense, you want to do, then it'll pull these out. So even if you're not using our instruction, let's say you're working with a student, then it'll go ahead and pull those out as well. All right. Okay. So that is sort of it in a nutshell. There's obviously a lot more. All of our data goes into a data portal, so you can report this at a site level, district level, a lot more. But I just really wanted to convey the base system to you all so you can see how our system is really set up. All right, and I'm sorry, I'm looking over to the right all the time because I have a second monitor. So let me see if some questions have popped up. So actually, real quickly before I go into that, we do have full professional development. So whether you're training your principals, your district administrators, your teachers, and we really chunk it. So we're going to do, the first training might be how to use a system. The second one be how to read the data. Maybe the third one, how to write IEPs. Another one is how to monitor instruction. So we sort of break it out into small chunk sizes so that, and we operationalize it for everyone's role. So obviously general ed teachers would have different training than a special education teacher, right? All right, so here is the last page. If you guys want to scan this, if you want to request more information or talk to somebody, you can. And let's go ahead and take some questions. All right, so first question, I noticed a whiteboard feature in your product demo. What does that do? So the whiteboard feature allows you to actually bring up any of our lessons which have music. So if you want to go through a decimal place value or a slope of a line lesson with your class or individual student, you could play it right then and there. But it also allows you to preview the lesson so that you can see what it is, and then you may assign it to a student individually to work on their own. All right, that was a great question. In all of your reports, can we assume the copy button allows you to copy the data to the clipboard and paste into word processing or spreadsheet? Yes. So that copy button allows you to take that text in that field or box, and then obviously when you're writing your IEPs, your PLAFs, you're going to bring the text over, paste it in there, and that's where you're wordsmithing it, combining with other data and writing it, right? But it makes sense for us to allow you to take that. That data is specific to the student, so you don't have to worry about it. You're not copying from another IEP. That's not what we're about. We're about generating data specifically for each student. Okay, here's another question. Our teachers, especially our new ones, struggle with learning another system. How easy is your system to learn? Okay, I know I showed you a lot and it does look sort of complicated, but on one level it's not. A lot of teachers have used online assessment systems. So initially it's about queuing up the student, queuing up the class, getting them assessed, right? And that's easy. And then afterwards, we just show them how to go into those two pages, the math and reading page, and then start learning which reports are useful for you. So again, when we chunk it into pieces, we have something called, like we call it the day 2 training. It's like after they've done the assessment, that's about the basic reports, and that'll be catered to what your role is. So if you're a special ed teacher or you're a general ed teacher or MTSS interventionist, you're gonna get a slightly different training. How do you compare to iReady and MAP? All right. So iReady and MAP are both, I would say, more summative assessments. MAP absolutely is a summative assessment, right? Its goal is to predict it, like how are you going to do it in the state test. And when you look at their scores, they only have 4-strand scaled scores in math. So it's numbers and operations, it's like 725, measurement, 428. That's all you get. So that is a summative assessment. It's not breaking it down for you. We're different because we break it down and we align the breakdown to skills and concepts and scope and sequences. So that is very, very different. And because we're a diagnostic model, that's why you can do the progress monitoring and we can recalculate the scores, right? The only way to get a pre and post score on MAP is to do the whole assessment. Now, the same thing with iReady. You can't take your quizzes and lay it on top of your baseline data. That's something only we could do. And they have the same thing. They don't have as many scores as we do. I think maybe in reading they may have. iReady will have very similar scores in terms of, sight words, phonics, comprehension. But we break it out a little differently. And we're definitely coming from a reading specialist background. So it's very granular and scientific. Also, in math, we're just completely blow everyone away because we have so many subtests. So that's really the difference. When you look at those reports I showed you, that data, the granularity is really, really very, very precise and very actionable. How can I get a more detailed look through your demo account? Do you have a trial version that we can look at? So on our homepage, when you go to our homepage, we do have a little link that says product tour. If you click on that, you can actually watch some tours of our system that shows what I just did now, but a little slower and going into more detail. But you can also scan this link and one of our ed consultants in your state, you can set up a 30-minute demo with them. So just scan it and fill it out and they'll contact you right away and set up a meeting, right? All right, so another question is, what are you guys doing in the area of AI? Okay, so AI is really fascinating. I know maybe some of you got the video message I sent out today, but AI, we're using it to support our engineering and to speed up our development. But one of the next things we want to do is take those goals we have. For instance, it said Richard will learn decimal place value, Richard will learn fraction, whatever it was. We're going to use large language models to help us write those into your SMART goal format. So that's sort of a natural place for us to use it. Now, our opinion is we want to preserve and protect student information, so our data is golden. That stays there, but we may use AI to help with the language processing so that we don't have to try to code every single variable and nuance of how you need your SMART goals written, right? So I would say, in a sense, we're using the best of both worlds. Good design, which is hardcore diagnostic model assessment, with the large language model to help accelerate development, and so on and so forth. All right, here's a question. How does your system compare to a CBM testing system, like Easy CBM for progress monitoring? Okay, Easy CBM is great. The thing is, you have to still know what you want to test. So you say, okay, I need to test Richard on long vowel. I need to test Richard on fourth grade comprehension. So the teacher has to know what to grab. Now, our system, we find everyone's instructional point. So first, our diagnostic gets you up to the point of knowing what do I need to work on next. So then it's really simple. You just look at our system and say, okay, what do I need to test the student on next? And you could grab our quizzes, which are similar to Easy CBM, but our quizzes lay on top of our baseline data. So completely different in the sense that we're a turnkey progress monitoring system. You don't have to worry about it. Where I would say something like Easy CBM, it's just really a bunch of quizzes that the teachers would grab, but they have to know what to grab. I think I see one more. I noticed a ranking feature in your product demo. What does that do? So that ranking feature is just a way, if the kids you're trying to keep track of how many lessons students are doing, so you assign them edge lessons. It's a way to look at the previous week, and I say, okay, how many students got 5 gold badges last week, or how many got 4 silver badges. So I could look at it real quickly and just make it sort of fun. So Monday morning, the teacher might say and recognize the students who had the best number of gold badges the previous week, right? Now, the great thing about this, you can have lots of students using the system. Everyone's getting lessons at their own pace. So it allows students at different levels to compete on lesson completion, right? So it's a fun tool to use. And that's something that we'd train you on as well. All right, I think that is it. We got a lot of questions. Doesn't look like anything else is popping up. Thank you so much for joining us today. And we will send out an email with a video recording as well as a slide deck. And again, I want to encourage you to go ahead and scan that if you want to set up a meeting with one of our Ed consultants. Really just have an easy conversation about what some of your initiatives are and how we could possibly help you. All right, thank you so much. Have a good rest of your day.